YouTube, Space Badger here, and today I am here to review episode 1 of Tower of God. Oh my god, I'm back, but that's not important. The anime is out, and it's actually pretty good. I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. I'm intrigued by certain elements and certain choices and certain dialogue options that they put in there as prefaces and setups. But overall, this episode was unreal. So let's dive in. So I really like the opening. The whole first minute and a half where they're doing the panning shots of all the characters that are going to feature a lot over the course of season 1 of the show. Putting the context and the discussion around the tower, what it can do for you, the money, the glory, the power, the intrigue, the ability to become a god. Obviously, that is taking direct reference from the associated introductory chapter of the webtoon, but in general, the way it panned, the way it contextualized it, it was really good, and certainly the way that it hung on certain characters was all fascinating, really intriguing setup. Then we go into basically the beginning of the dynamics and the relationships between Bam and Rachel. And what I thought was the most interesting and intriguing commencing of this sort of shift in perspective to what are predominantly the two main protagonists of the overarching series. I thought it was extremely interesting that they emphasized that it's a story about Rachel climbing the towers to find the stars, and Bam following her, being all about her. That is a distinct and a difference from the original chapter. Because the original chapter is very Bam focused, and the episode is clearly making a much more concerted effort, and clearly the producers are making a much more concerted effort to make this, at least from the outset, appear to be a duality and a dual story. Of course, as the episode goes on, you realize that fundamentally the story is about Bam, and it's a lot going to features on Bam experience and Bam's mindset and motivations for climbing. So what we then see is Rachel disappearing on Bam, having had Bam chase her down, trying to keep her from going, trying to keep her from leaving wherever they were before entering the tower. And we see her fade and disappear. And I think this scene is legit beautiful. The animation style is very distinctive. It's very dramatic. The coloring and the kind of fade into gold, which the fact that they chose gold is a very interesting choice, which I'm very intrigued by certain theories now that are going on in the overarching story, which I'm sure they will lean into more. But yeah, emphasizing the focus on gold is very important. And of course, Bam can't accept this once she's disappeared, once he's sprawled out on the floor before her. And I think they do a really amazing job of lingering between Bam and Rachel and seeing the kind of dread and terror of Bam perceiving Rachel as leaving and no longer being able to have what you realize to be the first friend he ever met. Jumping forward a little bit because I want to focus on Bam and Rachel for a moment. I thought it was also incredible that moment where they first meet, when Bam is trying to break open the ceiling of whatever the cave is that he is locked in, when he's got the long hair and the white drape. Putting the two reference points of her leaving him and her meeting him in the same episode, of two very different parts of the episode. We'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, I think that was wonderfully produced, and the fact that the gold is coming down from the light as Bam breaks out of his, I think, cave prison, and Rachel falls through, versus, of course, the gold light when Rachel is disappearing and dematerializing, going into the tower for the first time. So Bam cries out, and Bam is transported into the first floor of the tower. That's actually effectively what it is. And we meet Hedon. I love this. I mean, Hedon, the bunny rabbit, Donnie Darko, pole twisting, nebulous god. I love that he has a bit of a Hakai moment. I'm jumping forward again, but that's so good when he like dispatches the eel. But like that man, or that bunny, that humanoid knows so much more. And I have missed him, and I've missed that he hasn't become more of an isn't been a continued part of the series. But I'm so fascinated about him and his role. He's the administrator of that first floor, and he's clearly the testing ground for anyone who enters the tower in an unorthodox way, i.e. not as a regular, because in that scene you also have confirmation from Hedon that Bam is an irregular, and obviously proposes the very first test of the very first floor that Bam has to do to officially enter the tower and start climbing, as anyone else has, and as we assume Rachel has already just done. And it's very unclear at this point what the time perspectives are and what the sequence of events is and the chronology. You don't really understand how maybe the timelines and the passage of time works between when you're in and out of the tower. Because to Bam it appears that it's only momentarily, but Hedon speaks as if Rachel's at the top of the tower, like the events have already unfolded, that maybe it wasn't an instantaneous thing for Bam to go through and immediately follow Rachel, which is very interesting, and I love that like little sort of mini cliffhanger that you're not really quite sure where your setup is when you first come in. And then we get into the test, and this is the bulk of the episode, and I like it. There are parts of it I wish they'd done more with it, but I think what they do in general is very good. I'm sure episode 1 fight choreography, fight scenes, the tests are going to get more elaborate as the season goes on. But I do wish there were certain things that they'd done a bit more with, I'm not going to lie. But before we get into actually Bam trying to overcome the test, we meet Yuri and Evan, so the princess of Jihad, not that we know who that is yet, and Evan, her little white-haired, big backpack-wearing sidekick. And Hedon kind of taunts Yuri because Yuri's quite attracted to Bam and is very intrigued and clearly knows straight away that he's an irregular. We don't know why Yuri's there. We don't know why Evans is there. We know that Evan got Yuri there, but how he knew and how he knows as much as he does, because he also helps and coaches Bam at certain points in the test as well later on, once he sort of also comes on side with him. But Hedon's taunting them and says, well, here's the eel, Bam, the test, and this is what he sets up. You've got to get in there, you've got to overcome this steel eel, and you've got to break the ball to get into the tower and officially pass. Test of endurance, test of strength, test of control, test of overcoming fear, and staying calm. And of course, Bam just immediately goes in. Like, he's just ready, raring. Yuri stops him, says, you're going to die, what are you doing? And of course, Hedon uses that as bait to get the Black Marsh, not that we know very much about it, but March, named after the month, into the hands of Bam, who uses that as his pretty much only mechanisms of even fighting the eel or having a chance of breaking the ball, because it's very apparent at this point Bam has no physical skill set, no magical skill set. He is fucking nothing. He's just a boy. So he gets in there, and the scene where the eel finally raises up and swallows him, that is sick. That's also the bit where I'm kind of my most critical, because I think they could have done a lot more at the moment when Bam gets swallowed and has to cut through and take the eel down from the inside to a certain degree, or at least stun the eel from the inside. But it doesn't, and it kind of just cuts, and the eel kind of raises up and it spits him out, so you don't really see what he did inside, you don't really see if he has any skill. I would have loved to have just seen a scene, even if it was a couple of seconds, of what Bam is doing inside the mouth, because it's clearly implied that it's it's intended to be Bam's tactic. He knows he can't fight this thing from the outside. He knows he has to do damage upon being attacked, but you don't see any evidence of that, and it's just kind of stated. And one of the massive advantages of producing an episode and creating an anime out of any series is you can see and detail out a few of those moments, as where it's kind of just very true to the original panels of the opening chapters of the story. But regardless, cuts out of the eel, gets to the ball, but can't break it. And that's where you get that great scene, which I talked about earlier, about him trying to break the orb, but not being able to, and him flashing back to when he first kind of created an outlet to the prison. Also, just a little reference point, please note that when Bam did break out of the prison, Rachel was there and then immediately kind of stops him from doing whatever he was doing, and by like talking to him and becoming friends with him, right? That's very important. You never actually see Bam emerge. And then while he is frustrated and can't do it, the eel starts rearing up behind him again as Bam is trying to frantically break the orb. And that's when Evan jumps in. And Evan was pretty reticent to helping Bam initially, and was very reticent to Bam being given the Black March by Yuri. But he immediately, and again, seems to know the events that need to transpire, says, you got to talk to it, ask for help. And what we find out is that the Black March is like a sentient celestial or spiritual consciousness inside the actual weapon. It materializes in the form of this beautiful golden-haired woman who also finds Bam rather attractive and offers him his help. And Yuri's kind of completely abashed by this, like, what? You never helped me out. And she realizes that the Black March just prefers men and is actually willing to help, as has never been willing to help Yuri in the past. So that's what happens, and uses that, manages to break the sphere, clears the first test, and is immediately warped away. And I have to say, at this point, I was immensely impressed with the pacing of this episode. The amount of events they get through, the dialogue, the context, the synergy, the scenes, they managed to cover a lot of the overarching themes. And if you think back to money, power, glory, fear, the attributes of the god, what you have seen from every single character, what they have represented, has been an element of that. The gold with the money, the power with the form of the Black March, and even some of the certain acrobatic and skills that Yuri do, and of course the knowledge and the kind of the knowledge from Evan and the kind of godhood that Hedon kind of represents. They kind of catch every single beat, and I'm sure that's very deliberate. So there's a good thematic element being animated and presented, and a good representation of that opening 90 seconds, which I do think is just a really stunning way to enter the episode. But to the main point, we actually get into the floor of test. So we get to level 2, where we're immediately talked to, and Bam, who was given a pocket by Evan and Yuri as well. A very high grade pocket is all we know, but those are those little black orbs that have the counters, and what that pocket says is your the number of people on the floor of test that you are competing against. And then immediately the slaughtering commences, and there's great shots of people taking out people. Bam is encountered with multiple foes, and then we see my favorite character. We see Kun, we see him with the briefcase, we see him swipe off, pull out his knife, obviously dispatch that individual, and we also see Rak, the massive dino figure creature, who takes out, kind of ragdolls a sniper, and then proceeds to stalk his prey, of which he focuses on Bam, because you notice Bam also has the Black March, and Bam is just kind of scrambling. I mean, he's not putting on any kind of performance as where he was kind of calm and collected and actually kind of countering with the eel. None of that here. He is just flipping out. And so the final end scene is him staring down Rak, with Kun kind of comically observing from behind. And we don't get official introductions for those people, but that's their names. For those of you who are intrigued or curious, or anime only. You've got Kun, Aguero, and Bam, and that is going to be the main cell of this story going forward. So I hope you like them, because trust me, they're sick. And that's it. And that's how the episode ends. I thought the opening and the ending and the musical tracks that they chose were actually really great, really fun. I am so excited to get back into this, into reviewing every week, into putting out other content about Tower of God. I wanted to thank everybody who kind of encouraged me to come back. It's been a crazy year. You'll have noticed that my original Tower of God video I uploaded over a year ago. There's been a lot of stuff happening in my personal life that's just taking me away from this. But this episode was so good, and I was so excited to come back and talk to you about it. I couldn't help but do it. So for you, please leave something in the comments about what you liked about the first episode. If you have watched or read, I should say, Tower of God before, please tell me about what you're most excited about in the upcoming episodes or this season. And if you've just watched it and experienced it and you're like, this is interesting, and it just got advertised to you in Crunchyroll or whatever platform for wherever you are that's streaming that service, I think it's Crunchyroll though, globally, tell me what you thought, because as a opening episode, I think it's strong. I don't think it's perfect by any means, and I think there are other things that would be difficult to come to, but at least tell me if you're interested in staying with it and carrying on with it. Because trust me, this series is incredible. And there is so much content to get into, and this thing is on an adventure scale similar to One Piece, similar to Made in Abyss, those kind of really complex. But the background, the characters, the story, the lore is so deep with this series that if you were even remotely intrigued, tell me why you were intrigued, and I really encourage you to stay with it and stay with me, because I reckon it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, thanks everybody. Have a good one. Stay cool, stay clean. Space Badger out.